Okay, now in the first segment we left off here talking about how this bar had taken one step ahead and how we should expect price to pull back at least to the red bar, or the last red bar that the market cleared. And we see a red bar here also. Now that doesn't have to be here, but what does that tell us? And if we think logically, that tells us that that is two steps. So if price pulls back to the last step, your stop would go below the second step. And that is a very powerful stop level, because that means in order for the market to reverse and take out your stop, he has to go two steps. You could consider this is one step backwards and this is two step backwards. And we always go to the most recent red bars when we are looking back. So if this is two step backwards, what would be our third step backwards? The most recent red bar below this red bar is this red bar. So that would be three steps backwards. Now I mentioned that because it is very rare that on a single bar that a market will pull back more than three steps at a time. And when you see this green bar close above this step here, you are feeling pretty good about a long entry on a pullback here, because now you also have this second step supporting you. And when we look at this red bar here, the low of this bar, it did pull back to the second step, but it didn't really quite pull back to the second step, because the end of the first step is below the low of this bar. And you can see how the second step, or the second red bar, part of that range falls within the range of the first step. So even though it appears that price bounced off the second step, it still bounced off the first step. But now we have two steps tied in here, and what happened is the market sprang up off of double step. We'll call it the two step, a double step. And that is powerful, because when you look at the size of this bar and the size of this bar, they are both small range bars. But if price pulls back to more than 50% of that first bar, that spring is down more than halfway. So when it pops back up, look at what we have. See, we have a powerful spring up, because he stepped down on two springs, a double threaded or a double tiered spring, and popped up. But now let's focus on this bar once again and see where it closed. Now let's say if this bar had closed beyond this red bar, then this red bar would be the most recent step, and we would not anticipate price falling back to this red bar. And it works in a step-by-step fashion. For instance, now once this we sprang up off of this level and this bar closed here, what would be the next level of support? Where is the location of the next spring? And if we look here, we see that, and I like to use closing prices, but if you want to be a little bit more aggressive, the high of the bar also works, because these are sellers too. And if you want to ensure of getting in the move off of the spring, then you want to go to the next closest spring. But when I look here, I'm wrong, okay, because this is the next closest spring, because this bar did close above the high of this step. Now look at what happened after this bar. Where did price pull back to before it shot up? See, your entry would have been anywhere in this spring, or in this last step that we took forward. And you can see how powerful this is. And so now when we look at this bar, we wouldn't want to enter, or we look at this green bar, we wouldn't want to enter off of this green bar because it did not clear this spring. And all the spring is just another name for support. And until price should close above a red spring or a red footstep, do not expect price to go forward, because price, just like a man, you must have support to push off of for your next step. And we look here, look at this green bar. What happened? He closed above the open price of this step. Now it's more powerful when it closes above the high of the bar, but the real body is the real body for a reason, because that is the real body of the sellers composed in this bar. And the tails are called shadows. And what is a shadow? A shadow is a mere reflection of a real body. But now when we look at this green bar, that's a step forward because he closed above the real body here. And now what happened on the next step? Where did we pull back to before we bounced up? We pull back to this spring, or this last step backwards, and we pull back almost to the open of this spring. And remember what I said, the deeper the pullback into the spring, just like a spring, the more torque or the more power is built up, and the more powerful the upthrust will be, or the more powerful the step ahead will be. Okay, I'm running out of time on this section, and we will carry it forward on the next section, section 3.